Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to the Jones Reporting webinar. We're going to be walking you through how to use Jones reporting data to improve COI and risk management strategy. Welcome, everyone. We are your hosts. My name is Jack Armstrong. I work as an account executive here at Jones, and I'm pleased to introduce Margaret Christie, Senior Customer Success Manager at Jones, who will be leading the webinar.
Hi, welcome everyone. I'm so excited to speak to you about reporting today. This is one in a series of webinars that we have been conducting here at Jones. We do regular training webinars, so if any of you are looking for a regular user training, please do get in contact afterward. We offer them monthly. The next one is February 16th. We also do offer periodic compliance training, so if you're looking to learn more about the basics of insurance compliance, auditing COIs, please let us know as well. We have another one coming up in March, I believe. And then we're going to be offering some other webinars as well. So please feel free to get in touch if you have questions about those. Before we get underway, I do have a couple of things that I'd like to kind of announce. One, if you have any questions for me, please feel free to submit them in the Q&A section in Zoom. I know there's a chat and a Q&A. It would be great if you could put them in the Q&A. It'll be easier for us to answer them there. If anything does wander into the chat, we will circle back to it. But we do prefer the Q&A just because we can type in an answer. The other thing that I would like to say is I do plan on addressing questions at the end. Jack and I will be able to answer your questions at the end should you have any. We don't plan on addressing them kind of as we go along, just because there are a number of people in this Zoom, and we don't want to kind of clutter things up. So please feel free to submit them in the chat if you have questions. I will be asking a couple of kind of quiz questions today as we go through our presentation. You can pop your guesses and answers into the chat if you would like, and we will answer them from there. So without further ado, I'm going to kind of dive into our content today. We're going to be spending some time kind of speaking in general about managing risk on Jones. And then we are going to actually dive into the Jones platform to take a look at a couple of places and ways you can use Jones for reporting and to help manage your risk. So to get started, let's ask someone a question that can feel a little scary at times. What do you guys think is the average initial compliance rate on Jones? Please feel free to pop your answers into the chat. I'm not going to be giving you an exact percentage, so you guys can give me a little range. See, we have one. Please feel free, everybody, to pop in your answers. I would love to know. Ooh, 20%, 45, 50 to 70. I love the optimism here. I really do. I really do. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of good guesses in here. Thank you. I am going to relieve you of your suspense and let you know that the closest answer we got, Linda, great job. It's typically less than 5%. I hope that's not too scary to everyone, but it's the truth. When we see a new account come onto Jones, we're often looking at less than 5% compliance. You may be wondering, how does that happen? How is that happening before? Why is this the case? Let's dive into this. What does this tell us? We know that this happens often because before Jones, most of our customers were not carefully tracking their requirements. Often in the past, before getting Jones, people were getting COIs, kind of quickly scanning them. Do I see an active date on the COI? Do I see a general liability policy? Does this additional insured or certificate holder look vaguely correct? Okay, great. I'm gonna, pop the expiration date into an Excel sheet, shove the COI in a drawer in a folder, and never look at it again. So this is often one of the reasons that we have such a low initial compliance rate on Jones. Past practices for monitoring compliance have not been as exacting as the process people are using when they're getting Jones. As a reminder, typically when we have customers set up Jones, We are going through contracts, we're going through leases, we're going through service agreements, and we're pulling every requirement, and then we're taking your vendor, tenant, subcontractors, insurance information and comparing it to all of those requirements. So often there are little things in there, endorsements, whatever the case may be, property insurance that weren't being reviewed in the past. And so all of a sudden we're seeing all of that show up. And so we're seeing a really low compliance rate. Typically, tenants, vendors, and some subcontractors do not provide what their contracts and lease require. So I think this is kind of an interesting way to think about it. It's not just that in the past, our customers weren't asking for everything. It's also that kind of organically, tenants, vendors, and subcontractors are not just providing these things. They're not providing all of the things typically that we see that our customers are asking for. So I'm trying to kind of think of this not only from the perspective of you all collecting the COIs, but also for the vendors and tenants. They are not used to providing everything that they are letter of the law required to provide. This tells us that there's a mismatch, right? You guys, the people asking for COIs want, let's say, I don't know, 20 things, and your vendors, tenants, subcontractors are providing 10 of them, 15 of them. And so you have a little bit of a difference there. What you're asking for is not necessarily what your tenants, vendors, and subcontractors are looking to provide. So there is that gap there. Oh, sorry. I meant to close out my check here. But that is often the gap. And so my next question for you all, my next quiz question is, what do you think the most common gaps are on Jones? Does anyone want to take a guess at what we often see missing? I'll give everyone a second to pop in. Please go ahead and submit your guesses to the chat. Oh, there we are. Okay, I'm getting a lot of really great guesses. Yep. Umbrella. Yeah, these are really great guesses, and they're actually you're pretty spot on. This is what we most commonly see missing here. So our 30-day notice of cancellation, primary non-contributory coverage, which I don't think actually I saw anyone guess. I did see some errors in certificate holder and additional insured. Usually automobile liability is not what we need it to be. I did see a guess on umbrella limits. You're right, inadequate umbrella limits and waiver of subrogation for workers' compensation. It's a little niche. I saw someone guess waiver of subrogation, but specifically, that's one that we don't see very often. So these are actually our most common gaps on Jones. The reason I bring this up, and the reason I bring it up after talking about the difference between what you're asking for, you writ large, and what vendors and tenants are typically providing, is because I want to talk about what is important. So if we were to go through here and talk about what the most important things on this list are, and I know that I have some risk folks on here because I took a look at the participants list, so I'm sure I'll be getting some emails later. But if we take a look at what really you might want to look for first, what you were typically looking for before you got Jones, I'm willing to guess you were really looking for inadequate umbrella limits. I'm guessing you were looking for errors in the additional insured. You were probably looking for errors in the certificate holder, although as you may or may not know, the certificate holder does not actually impact the coverage that the COI is providing. It indicates where any mail, any renewals, any cancellation is going to be sent, but it's actually not going to affect the coverage. So I'm guessing that these are the things that really you were checking before. And so this is how people end up with a really low compliance rate on Jones. You can see that the vast majority of our most common gaps were not things that people typically check for. So what we want to talk about here today is focusing on compliance versus risk management. Often we have customers come on to Jones. They have a really low initial compliance rate and they think, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I thought this was going to be higher. Why is it so low? I only have 1 or 2 compliant records, or maybe I have 5, 10. They're here or there. They're at random properties. Wow, we really need to do something about this. That is because when you get Jones, we are looking at your compliance. We are looking to see if your vendor, tenant, subcontractor can check off all 20 of those things that you are asking them for. We are not checking to see typically if you're, or not, we are checking, we're not, what that number doesn't reflect is actually the level of importance of the different requirements that you're seeking when you are looking for insurance from your vendors, tenants, and subcontractors. So compliance means we're looking for everything. Risk management means that we are finding ways to actually decrease exposure across your portfolio. So when we are thinking about managing risk, we're not just saying, okay, we need to get everybody to have everything. We're saying, what can we do to decrease the likelihood of a difficult liability situation? My answer to a lot of this is work with your risk team to find a balance. Are you asking for things that you don't need to be asking for? Are you asking for things that maybe you're not going to likely get from a vendor or tenant? What are you going to do when they say no? What are you going to do if they don't provide it? Come up with a plan. So my first recommendation is really to work with your risk team to find out what makes sense for you. Maybe when the lease was written, maybe when this contract was written, you didn't think about the functionality of how it was actually going to work once you were asking for the requirements at a property, at a project. So that's my recommendation. How can Jones help you? Once you've talked to your risk team, you can actually use Jones to figure out where your problem areas are. Moreover, you can use the data in Jones to have that conversation with your risk team. Now, in a minute, we're actually going to go into Jones. We're going to look at where you can find that data and how you can make sure that you have everything that you need. But my first recommendation would be check your Jones dashboard. We're going to go in there. This is a newer feature. We released it at the end of last year. Check your Jones dashboards to see what it is you are frequently missing. If you see that 90% of the vendors and tenants on your portfolio are missing a certain thing, a certain requirement, something strange, then maybe it's time to evaluate if you should be asking for that at all. Maybe it's time to go to your risk department and say, hey, what are your policies around this? Can I waive this? Do I really need to be enforcing this? Or do I need to be enforcing this for all vendors and all tenants? Is it just important for certain vendors or certain tenants, certain subcontractors? Also, you have the Jones homepage as a resource. If you think of the Jones dashboard as a way to view your compliance, have these conversations, kind of figure out where your problems areas are and work through them, you can think of your Jones homepage really as a place to attack this on a daily basis. So if you are somebody who is specifically responsible for maintaining compliance at a property from day to day, that is going to be your destination for really making sure that you are addressing every single issue that's coming up with your vendors and tenants. And then lastly, if you want to track your progress over time, you can utilize Jones reports. We have a new feature that we released, I think 2 weeks ago on Monday, that will actually allow you to schedule reports to be sent to your inbox on a monthly, weekly, quarterly basis. That's going to allow you to take a look at how you're performing over time. Are you having, do you have a better compliance rate over time? Do you have a better collection rate over time? Do you see that some gaps are decreasing? And this is going to allow you to kind of track your progress and keep an eye on how things are trending. So my steps to decrease risk with Jones would be number 1, if you can, simplify your requirements. If you're asking for 20 things, can you ask for 15? I know that this sounds like a really obvious thing to say, but we find that often customers who come onto Jones will provide us with a list of requirements. Maybe we'll take a look at a lease and we see things, we actually sometimes call them non-standard requirements in our own kind of parlance here at Jones, that are unlikely to be met by a vendor or tenant. If you're going through an implementation process and Jones says to you, we don't think it's likely that you are going to get a vendor or tenant to fulfill this requirement, do you want to apply it to your account? That's a great moment for you to step back and go, maybe I should check with my risk team. Maybe this is something we don't need to have. If you're an existing customer on Jones and you want to have this conversation, maybe you've had your Jones account for a while, maybe you are taking a look in 2023 and you want to kind of deep dive on your compliance and see what you can do about decreasing your risk on Jones, this is a conversation you can have. I am on the customer success team. I work specifically with customers to make sure they're getting the most out of their accounts. I may work with some of you. Some of you may work with some of my colleagues. If you would like to have this conversation, if you'd like to schedule a time to speak with our auditing team to take a look at your requirements, you definitely should. Feel free to reach out to me if you don't know who your contact is. I can direct you. If I am your contact, you can schedule time with me to take a look at this. So my first step is simplify your requirements. From there, check your leases. Who's liable? Often we get leases from our customers and we go through, we pull out different requirements. Sometimes there are actually provisions in the leases that remove liability from the landlord, remove liability from the management of the property. These provisions could have liability on the vendor. Liability could be on the tenant if the tenant brings in a vendor. Are they liable for what that vendor is doing? Check your leases. Maybe you can decrease the number of vendors for whom you're collecting COIs. Do you need to be collecting COIs from your tenant vendors? Next, define a clear resolution path for your vendors, tenants, and subcontractors. If they are not meeting your requirements, then what are you going to do about it? I know that also sounds really simple, but often we don't see clear escalation paths with our customers. So how are you going to approach a vendor who says, I am not going to provide general liability to you? Obviously, I think in that case, most of you would say, well, you're not coming into the building, sorry. But what if your vendor says, I can't provide this primary non-contributory endorsement? Are you going to not let them in the building? Is it going to be based on what sort of work they're doing? Can you have that conversation? Can you waive it? I think it's really important to come up with a clear escalation path for what you're going to do if you encounter a vendor, tenant, subcontractor who is not going to meet your requirements. I know this also can often vary when we're talking about tenants. You may wish to kind of disturb them less, or you may wish to not pursue them to the same degree as you would a vendor or subcontractor. But having those policies really fleshed out can make a huge difference in the way that you are working with your vendors and tenants on Jones. It's going to prevent the people who are in charge of collecting COIs from chasing people that they no longer need to chase. And it's probably going to increase satisfaction for your tenants, for your vendors at your property. They're going to be less bothered if you guys have a clear policy as to whether or not you're willing to waive or let something go. Collect all COIs for vendors, tenants, and subcontractors. If you get your Jones account, you go in there, you think, oh, my compliance is not where I want it to be. This is where you should start. Make sure you have a COI for every vendor, tenant, and subcontractor that is going to be on your property or site. You want to make sure that you have something on file for everyone. The reason being, even if you have a COI that has a lot of issues with it, maybe it doesn't have the policies that you need, the additional insured isn't right, better than nothing. You always want to make sure that you are collecting COIs for all vendors, tenants, and subcontractors. The next step is make sure that you go through and apply your waivers. You have your policy, you've talked about it with your risk team. Can you go through and can you waive some things? We're going to talk about how you can actually do this in Jones, how you can use our data to do this. But this would be my next step. Go through and apply all the waivers you can. If you can waive something, there's no need to go into a conversation with a tenant or a vendor, trying to pursue them over something that ultimately you may not need. After speaking with your risk team, start to tackle the policies that are most important to you. We're going to go into Jones in a second and take a look at how to do this, but decide what you want to pursue first. Let's say that the cool thing about Jones is that you can see where the issues in coverage are. So let's say that you have gone through and you have a COI for everybody. Excellent. Great. That is the first step in de-risking. Second step, let's say that you need to make sure everybody has a current general liability policy on file. Maybe that's what you want to tackle next. You could go into Jones, you can take a look at who has issues with their general liability policy, and you can reach out to those vendors and tenants first. You can decide what matters. Maybe that's the additional insured that you want to pursue first. Maybe you want to pursue both of those at the same time. Either way, it's a way to manage by exception. Who here is not providing me with the things that are most important? This is going to be a key step in making sure that teams that are managing properties are feeling motivated and like they can make progress on this. Sometimes where we see burnout in the process of working on compliance rates is when it seems too overwhelming. There are too many vendors that are not compliant. There are too many tenants that are not compliant, and property teams don't know where to start. Having a really clear framework as to what you're approaching first can make this feel less overwhelming. And if you're tracking your progress with your reporting in Jones, you're actually able to see the change over time. Obviously, we all like to see that what we're doing makes a difference when we're working with the software. My last thing would be to establish a timeline for requirements. Do you want to increase them later? What I mean by this, circling back to step one, did you decide that you're going to simplify your requirements? Let's say that your whole portfolio does not have the coverage that you want it to have. Let's say that you go through and you say, all right, we're not going to go off lease-based requirements before. We're not going to go off contract-based requirements before. We're going to say we need this much in general liability, this much in umbrella liability. We're going to need this much in auto and workers' comp. And then we're going to say we need the additional insured to say this. You've simplified your requirements. You've gone through all of these steps. You've waived everything. You've collected every COI. You've pursued the policies that are most important to you. And now you're at a place where you feel like your compliance looks pretty good. You can go round two. You can say, you know what? On renewal, we are going to push our tenants to meet the requirements in their lease. The first time this year, we're not going to do that. On renewal, we want them to meet their requirements that are in their lease. We want these vendors to meet the requirements in their contracts. You can decide that over time, you are going to increase your requirements. This is something that we can revisit. This is something that Jones can help you revisit. If you would like to change your requirements and make changes on renewal, that's something that our system can help you do. So now that we've gone through kind of our recommended steps, we are going to, we're going to pop into our Jones platform, and we are going to take a look at how you can actually do some of this in Jones. So give me a second here to pull up my Jones demo account. And then we will take a look at how to do some of these things actually in Jones. I know you guys are so excited. You've probably been dealing with your actual compliance all day, and now we get to look at some fake compliance, which is everyone's favorite thing. So here we are in Jones. This is a homepage. When you're logging into a Jones account, this is what you're going to see on the homepage. We're going to start in our reporting section of our account though. So to access that reporting section, you can go to this box with little lines in it. We're going to click in here, and then you can see that we have reports and dashboards. For our purposes today, we're actually going to start in dashboards. Dashboards is a newer feature. We released this late last year, and I'm really excited because I think it's a way that can really help you guys tackle compliance in a manageable way. So the first thing that you want to take a look at, as discussed, is your collection rate. I mentioned to you that after you had that conversation with your risk team, you've simplified your requirements, you know what you want to do, or maybe you want to stick with your current requirements. The first thing you want to do is check your collection rate. Here we can see that my demo account has an 87.4% collection rate. Pretty good. Maybe we want a little higher. Our first step is going to be take a look at all records missing a COI. Under our compliance status overview chart, we're able to see here this awaiting COI section. We can click into our awaiting COI section. The first thing you want to do is filter here and take a look at any record that is not responsive. If you have a not responsive record, that means that we have reached out, we've asked them for their COI, they have not gotten back to us, and we want to reinitiate that request to them. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to resend these invitations to our vendors and tenants in this category to make sure that they are refreshed. And we're asking these vendors and tenants to send over their insurance documents. So my first recommendation, click into your awaiting COI section, go through, take a look at who's awaiting a COI. If you need to reach out to them again, reach out to them again. If you can archive or delete the record, archive or delete the record. The next step that you might want to pursue is garage keepers liability. Fascinating. It's a new one in there. We're doing really well on that in our demo account. Oh, because we only have one record that requires it. So the next thing is you might want to take a look for the requirement that's most important to you. How can you do that? In Jones, you can take a look and you can say, I want to tackle all of my records that don't have general liability where I want it to be, because that is something that is really, really important to me. I'm going to click into general liability. And I'm going to take a look at every record that has general liability in my account as a gap. We can see here all of these have issues with their general liability. We can say the first thing I want to do is tackle the ones that don't have their general liability and are expired. That sounds like a really bad situation. So we're going to go through those records and we're going to start with those. We can go ahead and we can click send 5 gaps and we can refresh our process of collecting COIs for these records that are missing their general liability and are expired. You can go through and then tackle the records that meet these criteria. Then perhaps, let's say you have a policy around waiving fidelity at crime at your property. This is something that you've decided only applies to certain types of vendors. Maybe this is something that you're willing to give waivers on. We can click in here and you can go through and you can actually waive these requirements. We can go through, we can choose the reason for the waiver here, submit. We can actually waive these. So this is our way at kind of hacking away at the things that we can do to get our compliance to a higher rate here in our account and make sure that we're minimizing risk. Another thing that you can use these charts to do is to plan ahead. You can take a look at when your records are going to be expiring. Now, this is our demo account. I think that our auditing team has had a little fun in choosing the expiration dates. For any of you who have been dealing with COIs for years, you know that this is not very accurate. Usually we see a big spike in expirations, renewals, Jan 1. So usually you'll see a lot more here. We typically see spikes on a quarterly basis, but this can help you plan. Where in your year are you going to be collecting a lot of new COIs? Where are you going to need to be pursuing vendors and tenants? And how can you plan ahead? So you can click in and take a look at who is going to be expiring at these times. So this is a way for you to actually take action in the account. Not only does this provide you an overview, but you're able to use these charts to actually do things in the account to increase your compliance rate. The reason I say that is because I want to next talk about our reporting feature here. This reporting feature is going to send you Excel files with the data. The reason that I make this distinction is typically we see different types of users and different types of use cases for our dashboards and for our reports. Our most popular reporting options are our master compliance report, our waivers report, and our expiring records report. We see these being pulled by different types of users. So if you are somebody who's overseeing a large portfolio, your needs are going to be different if you are pulling this report because you want to give it maybe to someone at a loading dock or a front desk who needs to see which vendors need to be allowed into the building. When you pull a report, you can click into a report. You can choose which properties you'd like to report on, choose all properties. You can specify record types here, and then you can choose which compliance statuses are important to you. If you want a list of maybe all expired records, not compliant, you can do that, and then you can click next. You're going to notice here that it says scheduled reports as an option. As mentioned, this is something that is a new feature for us. We just released it about 2 weeks ago. You are able to actually schedule reports. So if you would like to get a report on a weekly, quarterly, monthly basis, daily even, you're able to set that and this report will be auto sent to your inbox at that time at the frequency at which you select. If you click, I didn't choose. You have to select it and then click export. And then this is going to send that report to you. You'll be able to download the Excel file, take a look at it, filter it further if you need to. If you would like to take a look at your scheduled reports, you're able to manage them here. You're also able to delete them if they're no longer relevant to you. I have had a couple questions about this feature. You know, we release a feature, we get feedback, we make changes. I've had some questions already. Is there an ability to send scheduled reports to somebody else? Currently, no, this is not a feature that we have in Jones at this moment. However, it is something that has been shared with our product team, and so we have plans to make that happen in the future. If you are looking to pull a report from Jones related to who's compliant and who's not compliant, master compliance list is definitely the report that is going to show you the most information. If you would like to take a look at any report that is going to be expiring, this expiring record reports is going to give you that information as well. As mentioned, you can also check that in dashboards. If you're looking to take action, this expiring records report is a great way to also stay on top of anything that's happening. This waivers report is going to show you any waivers that you have handed out over time. This is a great way if you need to have a discussion, maybe with your risk department or someone else, maybe if you're a management team, your client ownership, you want to talk to them about where your waivers are happening. And if you want to keep them in place, this would be a great place to pull that data. This coverage gaps report is really interesting. It's a little bit of a niche report as far as Jones reporting goes. This is going to show you every single issue with every single COI that we have on the platform. This is going to be the most granular report, and it's a great way to have those conversations with your risk team about what you're asking for. Can you make changes? Can you say, you know what? Every vendor that we have, almost every vendor in our account is not meeting this requirement. Can we take a look at this? This is a great way to kind of pull that data. So you're not just viewing it in dashboards, you can take it with you if needed. This user management report, also kind of a niche one. This is going to show you who is actually a user at each property. So it's unlike the rest of the reports, it's not showing you Jones data, but this is kind of a handy one because you're able to do some cleanup on your account with it. It is our newest report also. So that would be how you can kind of take a look at these reports. The compliance status by policy is also going to show you where you are with individual policies. So this is another great tool if you're looking to have a conversation around the requirements that you're using. I'm now going to click into this Jones, which is going to take us back to our homepage, and I'm going to talk about what we have here on the homepage. This homepage overview is really designed to give the day-to-day user the ability to take action on things. We have a list here of every record that requires action from a user, any record that is not getting back to us or doesn't have compliant insurance on file. It's also going to show which properties the user has access to, how the compliance is at those properties. And you're able from this homepage chart to check in on your records that are missing a COI altogether. So you're also able to access this list of records that don't have any insurance information on file. Again, we always recommend that you tackle this first. And you're able to get in touch with any of these particular vendors and tenants from here if that is top of your priority list. So that is basically my walkthrough of Jones for you guys at the moment. I am going to now turn the floor over to you all. If you would like to ask us questions, please feel free to start popping those into the chat. Please feel free to ask us anything about specific reports or reporting capabilities. And then if you have any specific questions about arranging your requirements in your account, please feel free to contact us later. I can put you in touch with the correct folks. We can set up a meeting with our auditing team. We can take a look at your requirements and kind of make some decisions from there. So please feel free to pop any questions in the chat that you might have. So I'm going to give everyone a little second to pop in any questions. I'm also going to take a look in our Q&A to see if you have any questions. Can this be integrated with programs? So in terms of integrations, our integrations do vary depending on which particular integration it is. Please feel free to send me an email specifically about the way that these work with different integrations, and I'm happy to kind of have that conversation with you. Well, we have a question about COI review time. And I will say that if any of you are curious about kind of the usual Jones platform, not specifically reporting, but just day-to-day how to use it, we are having a regularly scheduled training on February 16th, 2 days after Valentine's Day, because what do you love more than insurance compliance? Yeah, it was a terrible joke, I know. But you can join us that day. The usual turnaround time for a COI, we say 24 business hours. Typically, it's less than that. January is renewal season. It is our busiest time of the year. And so we were up against our 24-hour mark. Over the past couple of weeks, we are seeing things reduced. I think the current is 10 hours. If you need a COI rushed, you can contact your customer success manager and your support team, and then they can help rush an audit if needed. Is there capability to communicate gaps to users and their insurance agents and brokers? Often tenants and vendors are unaware of the COIs and building requirements. Yes, you can do that. So you do have an option. Let me show you really quickly. I am going to pop us back into the Jones account that I had open. Let me share that again. So I believe the question was, can you add in an insurance broker or someone of that nature? Sure. You can, anytime you open a record, you do have the ability to take a look at who is being notified. If you ever send a notification, if you would like to edit that, you can go here, click edit, and then add in additional contacts. We do often see that we have users adding in insurance brokers here. I would recommend, of course, that you always have the vendor, tenant, subcontractor, and the insurance broker. The insurance broker will not often directly hand over the insurance to us without seeing their client also on CC. So that would be my recommendation there. What does primary non-contributory mean? Well, we do offer regularly scheduled insurance trainings, and we have a lot of resources around insurance knowledge. If you would like access to them, please feel free to send me an email after this. I'm happy to share some of them with you. Primary non-contributory, we can break it down. Primary meaning first, non-contributory meaning you're not paying into it. If you have a primary non-contributory provision, you're saying that person, if let's say if Jack is the one providing me insurance, I am landlord, he's handing his COI to me. I'm saying you, Jack, are going to cover it. If there is a liability event and non-contributory, my insurance is not contributing to whatever costs may arise from that liability event. So basically it's just referring to whose insurance is going first and whether or not anyone else's insurance is contributing to that. Do the vendors / subs need to pay to use? No one needs to pay when using Jones other than Jones users. So vendors, tenants, subcontractors never pay when using Jones. If an item is waived, is that communicated to the tenant via Jones email? Yes and no. We don't send them a notice that says, this has been waived. What happens is they may, well, if your waiver results in a compliant COI, so if you waive every gap that we had on that particular, for that particular vendor, tenant, subcontractor, and their COI is now compliant because it's all been waived, then they'll get a compliance notification. If you just waive something, but there are additional gaps, next time you send them a notification about their gaps, they'll only see the items that are still outstanding. So we don't specifically tell them, but that is kind of how that works. Let's see, if an item, let's see, you can add up to 4. Yeah, you can add, I think you can add, I think it's like a total of 5 because you can do 4 additional, then you can do 1 main one. So I see some specific issues here with accounts. If you have any specific questions about your accounts, please feel free to reach out. We're happy to answer them. I know, Linda Chambers, that you're working with a number of our team members here on auditing, and Kim, Steve, so I'm sure they can answer those questions for you as well. Does anyone have any additional questions about reporting or anything to do with Jones? Can requirements be easily changed, updated if they change based on the site? So you can update and change requirements in Jones. Our recommendation is that you let us know that you need to make a change and we can help you make that change. We can change the requirement, we can add new requirements. Jones is very customizable, so we are able to do this if needed. When a COI, I have a question here in the Q&A. When a COI expires, do the insurance companies know to automatically send an updated COI to us? If not, how much time is reasonable notice to give companies a heads up when they need to renew? Some brokers will send a renewal COI. We do have, well, I'm trying to, so let me answer that and kind of share something as well. That is a product that not many of our customers use, but is available. So when you have Jones, you can turn on an automatic setting that will automatically notify your vendors and tenants and subcontractors 30 days prior to an expiration date. So we think 30 days is reasonable. We send them a cadence of notifications, 4 notifications heading up to that date of expiration. So that's my answer to that segment of the question. Yes, sometimes insurance brokers do send renewals. They often mail them as in physical snail mail, as many of you who are certificate holders on a COI probably know. You'll get a pile of COIs. They show up. Sometimes you haven't worked with a vendor in 5 years, but they keep going. The product that I mentioned that is available, you can make Jones your certificate holder. You can make Jones a certificate holder on your account. Again, certificate holders don't receive any type of insurance coverage. It's literally just where mail is going. So if you do make Jones a certificate holder on your account, then we receive all of your renewal mails. We scan it and then we upload it into your account for you. That is my answer to your question. Please let me know if there's anything kind of outstanding on that. Then let's see, is there a feature we can use to save? Okay, so is there a feature you can use to save any additional documentation? Yes, there is a feature that you can use to do that. I can show you how to do that. Let me pull open Jones again. Just a second here. Let's see. Sorry about that. Okay. So the way that you can do that in Jones is if you open a record, you do have this related docs tab here. You can upload another document here if you need to store an additional document. And then this is going to save that document for you over time. There is another thing that I will show you. This is kind of like, we're talking about regular Jones user training. I definitely wouldn't go over this because it's kind of like a definitely pro user sort of tip. You'll notice that when you take a look at your Jones account, you have this vendor status that says ongoing. Now, this probably just looks the same in your account. You've probably never messed with this, noticed it before, but you can do something with this. If you click into a record, you're actually able to go to these little dots over here and click edit, and then you're able to make a start date and an end date for a record. Now, the reason that I mentioned this, you were asking about storing additional documentation, and you didn't mention that those documents had any sort of time nature, but I know that sometimes people want to store additional documents in Jones. Maybe they want to know the life of a contract for a particular vendor, which is a question I get all the time. So when you're creating your vendor, you can actually put in a start date. So I'm going to put in the start date of yesterday here for this vendor. Okay. And I can put in an end date of next week, just pretending that we have a really short contract with this particular vendor. Oh, and it wants a name in here. Save. Great. So if I do this, then we can see that this vendor kind of has a time-bound period during which they're going to be active. One thing I can do also is if I make their start date earlier and then I give them an end date that has already passed. So I'm going to make it yesterday. I'm going to say save. We can see that we have both of these. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't actually, I didn't make it. I made it March 1st. Let's make it February 1st. Okay. Save. Great. we're going to see that this says inactive. So this is a way for you to monitor if you do have some sort of time-bound thing with this particular vendor, tenant, whatever. If you want to observe the time of a lease or a contract, this is kind of a way that you can do it in Jones, which is, like I said, definitely kind of like a pro tip. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's a fun feature. Not a lot of people know about it. It's like a really old feature. So we don't, it's not like, hey, exciting, so people don't hear about it, but that is something that you can use. Okay, so I don't think I have any outstanding questions at this point. Does anyone have anything else that they would like to send over? Do a last round for questions here. While anyone is thinking about their last question, I'm going to give you a second. Like I said, we will be doing a standard Jones training on February 16th. Should you need it, please contact me afterward if you would like the invite to that. You can invite your team, whomever you would like to do. We offer these once a month. Next month, we will be doing a standard COI training. If you would like to attend that, please let me know as well. Additionally, we can also send recordings of past ones, and we do have a training course for insurance. If you would like to have that as well, I'm happy to send it. Let's see, I do have a question coming in. How do you turn on the feature that automatically notifies the vendor for expiration? Great question. Jones users actually can't do this. This is a setting that Sarah Jones employees can turn on for you. So I would say reach out to your contact at Jones if you would like to have that we call it auto renewal. The auto renewal feature turned on your account. There's no cost. It's just a setting. So reach out regarding that, is my answer. Okay, well, I think that wraps us up for today. Please, everyone, let me know if you have any questions or any feedback. I am going to share again my email and Jack's email so that you are able to reach out to us should you have any questions. And I look forward to seeing some of you on our next training.